Great couple of weeks. The last 2 weeks we got to meet some Hall of Famers, which is always great. So welcome everybody. Welcome to our meeting here at Tozzis. On behalf of the Pro Football Hall of Fame and the Pro Football Hall of Fame Luncheon Club Board of Directors, I call to order the 25th meeting of the 61st year of the Pro Football Hall of Fame Luncheon Club. Our invocation today, followed by our Pledge of Allegiance, will be given by Father Hetzel, Associate Pastor at St. Michael's Catholic Church. Father.
As we begin in prayer, let us keep in mind longtime member of this club, Gordon Knisley, who passed away in his sleep. And let us pray. In you, Lord our God, all things have their beginning, continuation, and end. Grace us with your saving presence, aid us with your constant help, and let us glorify you now and forever. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I also want to echo Father's thoughts about Gordon Knisley, certainly a long time great member here of our club, and certainly feel the void. I'm going to introduce our head table, as Father had to leave. He has some duties to attend to today, so we thank Father Hetzel for being here today. Our Vice President and President next year, Dennis Manzella. And you'll hear from these two gentlemen here in a minute. To my immediate left, our speaker today, Ken Carman. And introducing Ken today will be Scott Campbell. Also in the audience today, I'm not sure where they're all at, but there's some guests. Ken's cousin, James Carman's here. Right here. His uncle, Jim, is here. And his father, Ken Carman Sr. Welcome, gentlemen. I want to recognize our club sponsors. Again, these are the folks that donate money towards our cause, and we want to thank them by recognizing Liberty Ford, Aultcare's Primetime Health Plan, Wilkshire Golf Course, Marion Motley Memorial Fund Scholarship, and Dr. Peter Ferguson, chiropractor. It's been a busy sports weekend. We'll try to touch on a couple highlights. I want to congratulate a few folks. First of all, a couple of wrestlers that were state champions in Division I, state heavyweight champion, now a two-time state champion, Aiden Faulkner from Perry. Wrestlers at Perry, don't they, guys? Division II, heavyweight state champion from Alliance, Aiden Mosden. I want to remind everybody, opening next week, and since we'll be at the Pro Football Hall of Fame next Monday, you'll get an opportunity, if you want to stay afterwards and see this. The Browns exhibit is going to be opening up on Saturday, and again, it'll run for a few weeks, just like the one from Pittsburgh that was here not too long ago that we mentioned. So hopefully you had an opportunity to see that one. If not, make sure you check out the Browns exhibit at the Pro Football Hall of Fame as well. Want to remind everybody too about our upcoming election for the board trustees. If you are interested, please think about that. In the next couple of weeks, we will be taking names for those of you that are interested in running as a board trustee. The Vince Costello Memorial, we talked about that a few months ago and donated some money towards that memorial. I want to remind everybody there's a dinner on April 16th, which is a Tuesday night. It'll be the night following our meeting here. Tuesday, April 16th at Chibo's down in Waynesburg, 5:30. It's $20 a person. It's going to be a fundraising dinner. Hopefully you get a chance to go down there and help out, raise some money and additional money for the Vince Costello Memorial. And then also on Saturday, July 20th in Magnolia, more details will come out about this, but I believe right now it's going to be at the Village Park. That's when they'll unveil the statues and that. So it's going to be a great event and a good thing for our area as recognizing Vince Costello. We are selling tickets today for next week at the Pro Football Hall of Fame, so don't come here next week. We're going to be at the hall. Bernie Kosar is our speaker, so hopefully you can get your ticket this week and be able to be there next week. The March Madness board is full, so if you want to take a picture and get your numbers, we will have that available for you until everyone leaves today and you can get your numbers. A few weeks ago, or months ago I guess it's been now, if you remember Greg Campy from Oakland University, congratulations to them. I was watching this game the other day. They had a win, they won over Purdue Fort Wayne on Thursday, and they now play tonight versus Cleveland State in the Horizon League semifinal round in Indianapolis. So it was great to see Greg Campy and watch him coach. Boy, he's an incredible coach, and it was fun to watch his team play on Thursday. The Newsboys, the folks that were here and we gave a donation to, if you remember, around the holidays. The Newsboys banquet is set for April 10th. It's right here at Tozzis. It's a cash bar, starts at 6 o'clock, and there'll be a plated dinner at 7 o'clock. Tickets are $30 a person, so if you want to come and support that event, you can do that on April 10th, and you can contact Dave Posty. He is one of the gentlemen that are selling the tickets, and you can get you their phone number, or if you reach out to the Newsboys, they can get you the information as well. So those are a couple of groups, certainly with the Newsboys and with the Vince Costello groups that we backed this past year, so we hope you'll continue to support them. Now it's time for our 50-50 drawing, and we've got $190 in the pot, and Ozzy has the money. All right, I can see this. 069 831. Right down front. Right here, Ozzy. All right, next week, as I mentioned, our speaker will be Bernie Kosar at the Pro Football Hall of Fame, so you don't trust him? 069 831.
You sure the 8's not a 6?
TJ wouldn't lie.
I can remember that.
All right, great crowd today. All right, introducing our speaker today. It's a guy that is a local guy we've known for a long time, friend of the club as well. Scott Campbell is the new Director of Development at North Canton City Schools. Scott is also a Perry grad and a former teammate of our speaker. Please welcome Scott Campbell.
All right. Last time I was here to introduce somebody, it was David Carr, our four-time state champion wrestler over there at Perry. And right before I went up, Coach Larry Karras, my college football coach, was there, and I got in a lot of trouble when I was there, so that guy intimidates me still to this day. And that's saying a lot because I played for Coach Wakefield in high school football. So, but then they bring in these 4 Hall of Famers and that kind of, gee, man. First off, let me say thank you. Thank you to the Hall of Fame Luncheon Club. Thank you to RJ and Frank for reaching out, and then obviously Ken for allowing me to do this. I have the pleasure of introducing Mr. Ken Carman to you guys. He is a 2004 Perry High School graduate and then went on to be a graduate at Akron. And his quick rise in the media and in broadcasting stems pretty good real quick. Let me run through it. 12 years at 92.3 The Fan, where he currently runs the #1 talk show, the Ken Carman with Anthony Lima show. 11 years on the Browns Network. 4 years on Friday Night Touchdown, which is the premier high school football show on TV, and 2 years on Fox 8 News. He currently resides in Streetsboro, Ohio with his beautiful wife Liz. They have 3 boys, Axel, who's 8, Eli, who's 7, and Jonah, who is 4. Okay? So I've known Ken for a long time. Went to elementary school together, and as Frank said, we were football teammates. So I got a great story that I want to share with you guys. So we grew up in the same neighborhood over there off of Lincoln Way. We all went to Watson Elementary School. If you know anything about that area, great area. It's not a bad area. It's just men grew up a little bit quicker over there. And but in high school, Coach Wakefield, he had a rule. It was player-led teams. So there's always policies about the underclassmen having to walk home. No, upperclassmen, you take them home. So one time I see Ken walking down 13th Street. Who's the captain of the football team that year? It's me. So it's like, oh my gosh, I'm going to hear about this tomorrow from Coach Wick. Ken, get in the car. No, I'm good. I'm going to walk home. Ken, get in the car. This is only going to be bad for one of us. It's going to be bad for me tomorrow. It's like, no, man, I'm good. I'm like, what is it, man? You going to go meet with some girl or what? Like, get in the car, let's go. Nah, man, I just can't. I'm like, Ken, you know Coach Wakefield is going to take this out on me when he finds this out. You know that, right? All right. I'll get in there. He gets in there, you can just tell he's very, very uncomfortable. Ken, man, I'm just taking you home. I know where you live, man. Like, what's the deal here? Man, I got this neighbor. She's crazy.
I can't believe you're telling this story.
And I'm like, Ken, it's gonna be all right, man. We're from the same neighborhood. Oh, there we go. So maybe I shouldn't tell this story. So I drive home, like, Ken, like, what are you talking about? This crazy neighbor, and he's like, Scott, she just does some stuff, and I just don't want you to see it because you'll think less of me. I'm like, what? We can't control who our neighbors are. And so we pull off of Lincoln Way, we go back in Ken's neighborhood down his street and pull into his driveway, and Ken gets out, back then you had the football bags and people actually showered after practice back then. So you get all your stuff and then you have to lug it home. So sure shit, you're right then and there, this lady runs out of her house and say, Ken, they're doing it again. They're dropping it from the sky. And all I hear is, damn it, Dolores, go back into your house. Stop embarrassing me in front of my friends. And I will say this. We were in high school, and kids today, they might make fun of that situation. Ken walked across the street, and he walked that lady back into her house. Said, are you all right, Dolores? Just stay there till the end of the day. And that's who Ken is. So when you ask all of us who grew up with Ken and know the even worse stories, are you surprised that this is happening? No, I don't. It is not surprising because Ken carries 3 traits with him. Passion. If you listen to the radio show, it comes out and his Bill will laugh when he laughs at something or when Anthony works him up into a shoot. There's tons of passion that comes out in his voice. Everybody he touches, every event that he has to go to, they get that from him. And then there's a humbleness to him, okay? He was at Joe Thomas's Hall of Fame whatever party till whatever time at night, and then the next day he texted me if it was okay for him to call me and ask me a question about youth football. Yeah, I'm sure, man. We've been friends long enough. You can just call me whenever you want, Ken. Okay? But he also, with that humble part, he connects generations. I was at Stowe recently. That was my job before coming back to North Canton. And by the way, North Canton community, thank you very much for acknowledging Gordon today. But at Stowe, my job was to tell people about our new schools that were going to be up. And this lady came in and was like, do you even know where you're from? I'm like, well, ma'am, I'm from Perry Township, down in Stark County. She's like, oh, home of Ken Carman? That lady, for the next 3 months, fact-checked me on everything I said, by the way, for that master facilities meeting, but then called me and asked me stories about Ken. I'm like, man, I got work to do. But the last thing is a Larry Karras thing about leaders. Real leaders have gravitational pull. And Ken, whether it's on air, whether it's on Fox, whether it's on the radio, whatever it is, he brings people with him. So with that being said, I want to introduce Mr. Ken Carman.
Her name was Shirley. You got everything right but the name. Her name's Shirley. Thank you guys very much for having me. I'll try to be quiet. I'll try to be quick because I know that there's going to be a lot of Q&A. I asked Scott what they wanted to hear. I said, what are they going to be interested in hearing? He goes, they're probably going to be interested in hearing about the Browns. So I'll probably tell a little bit about what I'm thinking about all three of these teams up here in Cleveland. Then anything you want to know about probably the Browns, I imagine, or anything else, I'll tell you. Because TJ down here, I've never got to meet you, right?
No, sir.
By the way, Stark Media, correct?
Yes, sir.
You guys run a hell of an outfit, and I mean that sincerely.
I appreciate that.
There might be a couple of times I might have to ask you to turn the camera off if they ask me about Hugh Jackson or any of the other things. I got along with all the coaches except for one. I'll leave that to the Q&A. Anyway, thank you guys very much for having me here. I asked about what, again, you guys wanted to hear, and Scott said, well, just kind of a potpourri of everything, because there's a lot of things that I can just go on and on and on about. And I kind of wanted to treat this as basically like an opening segment of what I would do if I were doing a solo show on the network or anything like that. So I'll start it with this. It's July 31st, 2011. I'm 3 weeks away from getting married. I'm having a big Youngstown wedding, big Italian Youngstown wedding, cookie table, the whole thing. There's going to be 400 people there. And I'm helping to go through all the rigmarole of what I'm supposed to do. I can't answer a question correctly, or my future wife is going to snap at me. I can't do anything right, and it's a day like any other day. And I go in, and my boss goes, hey, hold on, I'll be right back. And my boss comes in, and he comes in with the HR lady, and he's letting me go. I'm 3 weeks away from getting married, and I'm being let go from my job. I call my wife, or my fiance at the time, I tell her, like, hey, I got some bad news for you. She is not upset with this news. Because at that time, I'm doing play-by-play at Ashland, I'm doing Akron Arrows baseball, I'm working at 3 different radio stations, I'm unloading trucks when I have time to unload trucks up in Montrose. And basically, it's kind of like, hey, you kind of need to lay off this foolishness and go get yourself a real job out here so you can help support a family. It's kind of the way it's going to be. I didn't blame her for thinking that way, by the way, and I still don't. So she seemed to be a little bit relieved by it. And I remember that my father-in-law told me he got laid off 3 weeks before he got married, and I'm thinking, well, I'm going to go get an application at Schwabel's, I'm going to drive a bread truck, and hopefully I can have a 40-year job, and I can have a retirement, and I can raise my kids, and no regrets. I tried it, it happened, it didn't happen, no big deal. And then I get a call from my now boss, Andy Roth. He wants to bring me in for an interview. I went and I did a road trip in Portland, Maine, and New Hampshire as well. It was a week-long road trip for the Arrows, the longest one we took. We're the furthest west team. And when I got home, I got about an hour of sleep, because I couldn't sleep, put on my shoes, drove up, did the interview. They called me up, gave me the job that same day. And I've been doing this ever since. And there's a very significant reason I'm bringing this up and telling you guys this. And I'll share that right at the very end, because there's a lot of people who they say, now I'm 37 years old and I've been doing this for a while. And I get people who come up to me and Their sons or daughters, they want to be in media, they want to be on the radio, they want to do podcasts, they want to do TV, and they go, well, what do I got to do? And I said, well, the first thing you got to do is you just got to try. It's just like acting, like anything else. You just got to go out and try it. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, ain't no big deal. It happens, right? I said, the other thing you have to do is you have to treat every single time on air like it's the last time you're ever going to be on air. Like someone's going to come in and they're going to pull the rug out from underneath you. They're going to change your format. They're going to take your job, and that's going to be it. Because it literally happened to me back in the day. And I use that lesson every single day I go on air, and I'm saying if I'm going to speak about anything, whether I'm right, whether I'm wrong, whether it's good, whether it's bad, you got to speak about it passionately. You have to have some energy when you're speaking. And when I look at these three teams, and hopefully I'll make this a little bit entertaining for you, when I look at these three teams in Cleveland, I look at three teams at a crossroads. I look at the Guardians first because the season's getting ready to start there. I look at a team that right now has a new manager that nobody really knows. I mean, his face kind of looks like a sandwich. He's a nice guy. But other than that, no one really knows this guy other than he played a couple of years ago, and that's it. There's no more Terry Francona anymore. And with no more Terry Francona means that all the warts that people had about this baseball team are starting to bubble to the surface, and the naysayers are getting louder and louder as the time goes on, because we don't know what they're going to do, and I can only sell that it's baseball and anything can happen, but you can only push hope so far. And then we get to the owners, and well, we all know that the owner doesn't like to spend a lot of money, which, I'm going to make this reference here. I thought this guy wasn't going to do it. I mean nothing politically for anybody out there. This is not a political statement. But it was quipped to me by a caller last week, we had to look it up, that it doesn't really sit right with the fans where if you count what Matt Dolan's taken in from the family trust for his campaign, he'd actually be the third highest paid Guardian right now, which doesn't really sit well with a lot of fans, not that they're starting to pick that up. So you're in a sport that has money problems because of the television deals, and then you have a question of, well, can we put out the Guardians games out there for everybody else to watch? But you always want to take it to market. How can I take it to market when no one else will really pay that type of money and really pay players' salaries based on a television deal? Local TV doesn't have it. Apple really right now wants to stay national. They don't want to get involved with local teams right now. Amazon doesn't really buy anything. They partner up and start their own networks. Maybe that's a possibility at it. But there's not much excitement for the Guardians right now. The only excitement I can think of for a lot of people is the hope of a new owner. The only problem with that is we've seen many, many times over with different ownership groups throughout the how many years we've all been here, is that sometimes it's better with the devil you know. There's plenty of criticisms to lay at Paul Dolan's feet, and I would agree with most of them. But with David Blitzer coming in eventually, because I think that these are the last few years of Paul Dolan's ownership, with David Blitzer coming in, I think that he will come in and make a splash. However, I do worry that he will run his business like a businessman. And eventually he will see profit and loss and want to make sure that the loss is as small as it possibly can be and that the profit is going to be as high as it can be, and he's going to make cuts and we're going to probably be in the same spot. And that's not an excuse for the Guardians because it is a baseball problem. And I don't know how to make it better other than a salary cap and a salary floor, and it'll probably be a cold day in hell before any of those two things happen with owners or players. And what the worst thing is for the Guardians right now is that their neighbor right next to them makes them look even worse. Because while I talk about Paul Dolan pitching pennies and making cuts where he can to keep the lights on and do all the other things with the stadium where the taxpayers pay the money to renovate and take care of, I have an owner over there in Dan Gilbert who is a modern-day George Steinbrenner. At least the good qualities. He wants to win. He's a very competitive person. He thinks he knows the game, which makes him a very dangerous owner when they think they know the game. And he demands excellence out of his team. He's everything that a fan would want in an owner. And he's right next door to the Guardians, and that makes it very, very tough for them because we've seen examples, pure proof positive, that he will pay for anything to make sure that his team wins a championship. He will go back to LeBron James with his hat in hand to make sure that he can win a championship. And now that LeBron's not here, and probably LeBron's not coming back, he will do anything he possibly can to make sure that his team can win a championship now. And they are at a crossroads because when I look at where the Cleveland Cavaliers are and the Cleveland Browns, I find them almost a mirror image of themselves, and I'll explain here in a second. You've given up 3 first-round picks for Donovan Mitchell. You need to make sure you do everything you can to keep Donovan Mitchell here. He's the one that stirs everything with the Cleveland Cavaliers because nobody else is ready to take that next step yet. Darius Garland, the slaps in the face, the injuries, it's been a very difficult year for him. Evan Mobley, he's good, except when he's taken on name brands. He gets very nervous. He's still a very meek player, but he's young. You don't want to give up on him just yet. So it makes it much more convincing for everybody to make sure that Donovan Mitchell stays, because Donovan Mitchell is looking at his future. He sees it already with Dame Lillard in Portland, where he's a player that everybody respects and everybody seems to like, but nobody is taking very seriously. And he wants to make sure that doesn't happen. He may want to play in New York, but I know for a fact he likes it here in Cleveland. From any source I say, he really likes the area. But he's not going to stay if he can't think that there's a winner here. His best deal is here. His best signing opportunity is here to make the most money, but he also knows that if things don't go well here over the next couple of years, he can still make the most money and just get traded to a place he wants to go. For J.B. Bickerstaff, there's pressure on him because if they don't make it to the Eastern Conference Finals this year, that'll probably be the end of it for him. And he's done an admirable job, but voices change in the NBA. I see a face right over there. I don't think he agrees with me about J.B. Bickerstaff. And then you have Kobe Altman, where you are recording. I think Kobe Altman is much more interested in what guys on the radio say about him than what his basketball team does. And that can be a very big problem. The reason where I put the Cavs and the Browns in the same category and almost as a mirror image of each other is the Cavaliers gave up 3 first-round picks for a player that they were going to ride everything of their hopes on for the future. The Browns did the same thing. And a lot of us are looking at this year, and radio guys, we tend to overstate things that are pretty obvious. Oh, it's the biggest offseason we've ever seen. It's always the biggest offseason we've ever seen. It's everybody's favorite team. It's the biggest offseason we've ever seen. It's going to be the biggest season. Well, for all intents and purposes, this truly will be the biggest season. And what we've done is we've taken our truths and we've manipulated them in a way because now everything seems to be on the table. Everything seems to be possible. Everything is up in the air. And we all have our ideas of what the Browns should have done. But it wasn't just this last fall, and it wasn't just the trade for Deshaun Watson, and it wasn't just Baker Mayfield's shoulder injury and the lack of him being able to play to a high enough level to be signed long term. And whether or not his teammates liked him or not, doesn't matter about that. For the Browns, this goes all the way back to 2016. And when they decided to tear it down to the studs. I've done the Browns radio show for a long time, and I've told this story many times. I've even told it on the air, that when you truly get to know the people, it's easy for us to say, hey, we don't know what they're making in professional football, but they get a $20 million contract, they'll be perfectly fine. Yeah, that's what the money's for. It's true. A head coach who gets fired, he has a very nice landing pad for him when he does get fired in the NFL. That's all true. But they didn't run Xeroxes and make $14 an hour and $14,000 a year back then to go on and just make a contract where they can be embarrassed publicly by guys like me calling them losers. And that's the very serious part to this, is where I sat there and I sat across the table from Mike Pettin, who knew he had a quarterback that he did not want to play, that was drafted to play, that did not take the game seriously whatsoever, and he had another quarterback in Brian Hoyer who did take the game seriously and who was a good teammate and was accountable to everybody that he talked to. He had another guy, for lack of a better term, was a goof. And he was being forced to play that guy. And he didn't like it. And I didn't like it for him. And to know that things were coming to an end, to see a look on a guy's face when he knows in early December that this is over at the end of this year, that's a look I'll never forget. That's a sadness I'll never see again, because he knows that unless there is truly a miracle, he'll never have this position again. And that's where money doesn't matter. And that's where this starts, is way back in 2016, to pay off everything for the Browns. Because they've made tough decisions. And it's become a year of reckoning for this football team. And I mean that in every single syllable I say, and look at the moves of what they've done. Where this is a team, and again, we take our truths and we mix them up, because if I say that Deshaun Watson isn't confident, well, I'm a hater. If I say that Deshaun Watson did play a little bit better in the second half of some of these games, well, then I don't see the truth of how really bad he is. And then there are people, and rightfully so, you're allowed to love who you love. There are people who still love Baker Mayfield and think that the Browns will rue the day they got rid of Baker Mayfield. And that's perfectly fair. You right there, you love Baker Mayfield. It's not just about that. It's about 8 years of selling hope, of selling a possibility, bringing something here we've never seen before, and having it come to one season where you're coming off an 11-6 year, you've made the playoffs, you've competed in this division, and we have more questions than we've ever had about this team. And they tell you with every move they make how much confidence they have in their quarterback position or the lack thereof. Trading a 5th and a 6th round pick for a guy on a flyer, and it's a decent move, but trading a pick for a guy who's seen as a malcontent playing for the Denver Broncos. Trading a 2nd round pick for a guy who's seen as a malcontent playing for the New York Jets, where you spend $230 million and give up 3 first-round picks for a quarterback who's supposed to do what? A franchise quarterback who's supposed to what? Create weapons himself because he's that good. They tell you with every move that they make how nervous they are about this season coming up. I liken it a lot to Goodfellas. I'm sure everybody in this room has seen the movie where Paul Cicero, who's playing Paulie in the movie, signs over the papers and he gets involved in the restaurant. Really what he does is he just uses it as a shell game so he can go sell booze and do whatever, because it doesn't matter to him because it's going to end up in bankruptcy anyway, or they're just going to burn the place down and they're going to get their insurance money and that's going to be it. The Browns find themselves in a spot they got to do the same thing. There's no more draft picks. There is no more building. There is no more taking a guy in the 5th round and trying to develop him anymore. The now is here. Myles Garrett was drafted in 2017. He's 8 years into this thing. How many years did Dwight Freeney get to play? Because I'll tell you right now, at year 9 with Dwight Freeney, people were already starting to think he's an old man. We're going on to year 9 with Myles Garrett. Going on to year 7 with Denzel Ward. Guys who are good players. Guys who we signed to big contracts. One of them in Myles Garrett, who will be a Hall of Famer, and hopefully we'll talk to you guys at some day standing right here as you guys welcome him in. And what are they going to have left to show for it? All that planning, all that work, all that criticism, guys like me, fans like you, with one goal of asking, what are you going to do to pull the nose up on this thing and make it a winner? Rarely is a team at 11-6 have to answer those questions. The Cleveland Browns are very much at a crossroads right now. Just like the Guardians, just like the Cavs, and they know what's at stake. For Miles, for Ward, for Bitonio, for the younger guys that they drafted that we'd like to keep around, for Kevin Stefanski, who now is on a year-to-year basis with the Cleveland Browns, where I know he's the defending coach of the year, but once you make the playoffs, more is going to be expected of you, and you're going to be expected to make the playoffs each and every time you're there. Each and every season you have, you're expected there. And if you can't do it, we might blame the quarterback, but the contract says they can't. And so they'll find something different, like they did with their coaching staff this year. Because we're in desperation mode now on an 11-6 football team. I can't underline that enough. On a good, solid team that has a good record, we're in desperation mode because it comes down to one player. It means a lot for Stefanski. It means a lot for Pete Podesta, which if you guys can tell me what Paul Podesta does, I'll appreciate it during the Q&A. If you guys just have a comment on what Paul Podesta does for this team, I will take all suggestions. Because anytime they do well, here he comes out, and anytime they do bad, I can't find him. He's like the Wizard of Oz. So if you guys got anything to tell me, please, I'm all ears. I've been trying for almost a decade now. For Andrew Berry, who, hand to God, is a good man, a good person. Sometimes I think he's too good for the NFL. Where he actually tries to remember the names of your kids and what they like to do and their interests and what you've been up to. He listens to the radio shows, he watches the TV, he actually has a heart, which is crazy to say with a lot of general managers in the NFL. A lot of them you have to look past it. I've told this before, I was one of the biggest patsies in the city in 2017 when they ended up, or with 2018 when they ended up taking Baker Mayfield. I was convinced because I was told that they were taking Sam Darnold. What I didn't realize is that they were sick and tired of having all the leaks, so John Dorsey was just going ahead and trying to smoke out all the leaks, and he didn't care whether or not I went on the radio and embarrassed myself over taking Sam Darnold. He was going to make sure he stopped the leaks. And still to this day, I do respect him for it. You got to find where the leaks are, and you got to get them out of there. But these three teams finding themselves at a crossroads, it does make me realize how lucky I am to get to talk about them and get to share an opinion with you, whether you guys agree or disagree with me today on any one of these teams, that's fine. And we can talk about it during the Q&A. But it is a blessing, because I told you that when I walked into that office on July 31st of 2011, and I thought my career was over. I sent out some demos, kind of in hope, but I thought that's it. I'm just going to go and work with my father-in-law, and hopefully I'll have kids and I can coach them in baseball and football, and that'll be it. And I was on my way here today, and I looked off to my left while I'm coming down 77 South, and I passed the exact radio station that I got fired in 12 years ago. And I'm on my way to speak to a group of people who, hand to God on this, I've always dreamed of speaking to and always dreamed of being a part of. I delivered the Massillon Independent when I was a kid. I read Todd Porter. I read Mike Popovich. I read the stories that they wrote about this meeting after every single Monday, every single day, every single week. And I always dreamed of being a part of this. I always dreamed at least being in the crowd. Never in my wildest dreams would I have thought I'd be speaking to you today. I'm humbled. I can't thank you guys enough for having me. I hope you got something out of this. And again, I'll answer anything you want me to answer as we do the Q&A. Thank you so much. Nobody has anything?
They signed Flacco.
Will they?
Yeah.
I don't believe they will. I believe, honestly, I believe they might want to, but you being the first person to ask me any question on anything about Joe Flacco is probably why they really don't. Because, did any of you guys get kids with Flacco jerseys or anything like that? Because there are a ton of people who have Flacco jerseys, and whether he's on the team or not, they're going to be wearing them in that stadium coming up this fall. And the first bad pass Deshaun Watson throws, forgive my language, they're going to boo his ass off. And so then they're going to be bringing up Joe Flacco, and if Joe Flacco's standing on the bench or standing on the sideline or sitting on the bench, it's going to be a very awkward moment for everybody involved. And I don't think they want 60,000 people in the stadium going, what are they going to do here? This is going to be awkward. And that's probably the reason why I would love him to bring him back. He's a good guy, good leader. Definitely one of the vets already. One of the things that they went out and they lost 2 games out west when they brought him in, Denver and the Rams, and they thought that they were in the best position possible and after they lost those games because he acclimated himself so well to his teammates. They were like, this guy's a veteran, this guy's a leader, we can do something with this guy. That's how good and professional he is, but because of those reasons, I don't think they're going to bring him back. I'd be surprised if they did. Right back there.
I really question their ability to develop talent, and they always want to buy it. And I'm not sure who's up there calling those plans. Who get that is.
Well, I think it's a good point because I liken the Browns and their drafting to my wife. Let me explain, hold on. I go to my house, and I know that I got to get my footer drain cleared out of there. We might have foundational problems. And I know that we have to get an air conditioner fixed. I know that we got to get an air conditioner replaced. It's 18 years old. This thing's on its last leg. It's about to bug out this summer. I'm telling you, right now, the thing's going to die. We got to be ready for it. My wife wants to plan vacation. My wife wants to plan trips, she wants to plan fun, she wants to have fun, and none of that is fun to her. And it's just like with the Browns. Wide receivers, big playmakers, those guys are fun. 3rd round picks are boring. Day 3 picks on Saturday of the draft, those are boring. But these are guys that you build your team with. That's why it comes down to this year in a lot of ways for the Browns, because you mentioned the development. You took Siaki Ika to replace Tommy Togiai, and neither could get on the field. You took Cedric Wilson to replace, Cedric Tillman. You took Cedric Tillman to replace Anthony Schwartz. One's out of the NFL right now, and the other one, he's a young kid, God bless him, but he can't run the right route to save his life. So you have these players who you take in your middle rounds that you have to build, you have to develop with, you have to be able to get them, at least stash them like the 5th and 6th and 7th round guys. You have to be able to put them on the practice squad even. Maybe stash them on the practice squad, see if they can play special teams. And they got a couple of those. Roddy Hickman they brought in and stuff like that, and they got some decent ones, but I still don't know if they got enough to turn some of these guys into starters.
What's the situation now with Joe?
As of what I know, they said the first surgery was good. They said the second surgery was good. It's just a long time to come back from something like that. I think that they're going to keep him and work something out as an olive branch. I hope they do. I hope that they don't have to sit there and deal with a very mad fan base if they were to cut Nick Chubb, something like that. I think that they're going to come to, because he's making $12 million this year. They're probably going to make a change there with that and maybe extend him out, spread that money out over the next couple of years, see if they got anything. I would hope for him to be back by somewhere in October. Is where I would see that. Right there.
Talk about the coach you didn't get along with.
Hugh?
Yeah.
What do you want to know?
What did he catch you doing?
Sorry?
So what did he catch you doing?
He didn't catch me doing anything. There's a lot of guys. One day I'll tell the full story.
We got time.
There's some guys, like, they say, well, Bill Belichick doesn't care. That's amazing. I'm putting Bill Belichick and Hugh Jackson in the same sentence. You guys are still looking at me. This is amazing. So they say, like, Hugh Jackson or Bill Belichick doesn't care at all what the media says, which is totally false. Totally false. Anybody who knew Bill Belichick, any of the writers knew he would get on his bike at 4 in the morning and put in cassettes of old sports talk radio shows from Les Levine on 1420 WHK and all things. He listened to them in the morning to see what they were saying about him. He became close personal friends with the late, great Casey Coleman. I mean, this is a guy who paid attention to it. But he was a good enough coach that he could work out of there. Hugh's not a good enough coach and cared way too much about what any of us said. And then got very desperate and wanted to make a trade, and he heard about what I said about that trade, where I thought it was a very desperate thing to do and really a stupid thing to do, to want to trade a second and a third round pick or whatever the hell it was for A.J. McCarron. And he didn't like it. And one day it just came down to a very, very big issue between both of us, which is the best way I could say about a war of words, I guess, if you would. But but again, a guy who cares way too much about media and would call in, and we know he called in before as a caller. We know he did that before, and then went after me on Twitter a couple of times back in the day. But I still don't know why. I'll tell you this. At least I can call it down the middle. I still don't know why they fired him at Grambling. He was getting better at Grambling. They actually had a better year last year at Grambling, but they let him go. So, yeah, that's as clean as I can put it. That's as clean as I can put it. So, there you go. Did I let you down on that one?
A little bit.
A little bit? All right, I'll tell you this. All right, I'll go this far. It did come down to a point. Can we stop that thing just real quick? Just real quick. It did come down to a point, I'll share this part, where I was wanting to ask a question. I asked somebody else about whether or not we should ask the question. He became upset that I asked somebody else about that question. And it came down to, I said, well, I'm just trying to make you look good here. This is not a big issue. And he looks at me, he goes, I don't need you to make me look better. And it turned into what I went, yeah, you kind of do right now. And he didn't like that answer at all. He didn't like that answer at all. But again, they fired him at Grambling, and I'm like, he got better at Grambling. I don't think you needed to fire the guy, so at least I'm fair. Way back there, yes.
Why do they not like Kareem Hunt in the back? Seeing as how he scored more touchdowns than the other running backs combined.
I think what they want, Kareem is getting a little long in the tooth. I think Kareem was a Leroy Horde type of running back for us this last year, where he was very good in short yardage situations, but I think that they want somebody that they can count on for an entire season. I do know that Stump might have had some questions about that, but I know Kareem, he's had some trouble in the past, but he's got a good heart, and I know somebody up here who knows that too. He's just, he kind of drives it into the ditch here and there, but he's got a good heart. But I wonder if this is probably this last year was his last year in the NFL. I hope not, but I don't think he's coming back to the Browns, and I really don't think he's going anywhere else. Right there.
When you look at the 49ers and the Chiefs, why can't the Browns get more creative in their running plays?
I think it's because they might not have the horses that they need on the offensive line. Without Bill Callahan, I think that makes me worried because he's done a very good job. Nothing against Andy Dickerson. I don't know the guy. I've never met the guy. But I think right now, when they had, Jaron Christian in there at left tackle, a guy who, I forgot about Jaron Christian, and the injuries that they had across the offensive line, it's kind of trying to make do with what they have. If I don't have the horses, I can draw up all the plays that I want, but if they can't get to the spot, they can't get to the spot. And in San Francisco, Trent Williams is a guy who's aged like fine wine. He's going to be a Hall of Famer. And they got other good offensive linemen that they've been able to do it. And the Browns have had good offensive linemen, but they've not been healthy that much. And so when you have to keep bringing in more guys, it's where Bill Callahan kind of has to put the lipstick on the pig for everybody, and it makes it a little bit more difficult. So if they could stay healthy, I think that they could get more like that, but sometimes I think that they're barking up the wrong tree. Like the 49ers have Brandon Ayuk, at least they still do, they might not soon. But they had Brandon Ayuk where we got Elijah Moore, and we tried to use Elijah Moore that way, and it turned into a disaster. And then we were forced to do it that way when we lost Nick Chubb in week 2. And so you had to keep him guessing some way, and it was everything we could do just to get the ball across the goal line at any time with anybody, let alone Joe Flacco or any other backup quarterback.
I'm kind of tired of the Browns organization selling us on Deshaun Watson, as you mentioned a couple times, to the point where they're crippling us with not having an adequate backup. I'd love to see us trade our third for Justin Fields and bring in some competition for Deshaun.
Well, I think a lot of people in the room would agree with you. Again, we're 3 years in with this guy, and he hasn't given us much.
Might push him.
I think at this point I'm so nervous about his confidence. I think it might push him the other way. Which I know a guy like you wouldn't care, and maybe I wouldn't care at the end of it either. But they're just not going to allow that to happen with the type of investment they've made on him. I know I hear groans too, and I have to agree with you, but that's kind of the way they're going to do it.
Why all the changes on the offensive staff, and was he forced to do that?
I don't know for sure if he was forced to do that. I think the changes on the offensive staff became apparent to them, and I disagreed with them, but it became apparent to them because of how they want to run this offense with Deshaun Watson. I think that's what they wanted to do. Again, you don't see a lot of you see guys from 11-6 football teams get plucked, not get fired. And that was a surprise. The only guy who really got plucked for you was, Bill Callahan, and that was by his own son. So I think that those moves, they show you, and guys get so... I made a comment a couple of weeks ago, and this kind of goes back to what you were saying, is Baker Mayfield got his team to the divisional round of the playoffs. Both teams. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Cleveland Browns. They got to the divisional round of the playoffs. I said, you're looking at a guy right now, at best, is getting you to the same spot. Now, there ain't nothing those guys have in common, except they're both right-handed. But you traded Baker Mayfield for Baker Mayfield. But at the time, they're chasing down a franchise quarterback because they know what pushes down everything. And they know that they don't have a chance unless they do get to a guy who can somewhat get to Patrick Mahomes. And the only other guy who can do that is Joe Burrow, and you ain't getting Joe Burrow. And the only other guy other than him who has a chance to it might be C.J. Stroud, which is ironic as it is. And then the other guy might be Josh Allen. And so they took a stab knowing that they're going to get fired one way or the other, whether it's going to be with him or whether it's going to be the other guy, and that's what they did. But I always have to admit, when they like to tell the story, it's been said on the TV a bunch of times during games. Deshaun Watson went and he talked to Kevin Stefanski, and they met over the offense, and Deshaun Watson loved the offense, thought it was a great offense. I'm going, we were the first ones out on Deshaun Watson. It was 10:30 in the morning on a Thursday. We're the first team they said was out of the running for him. It's okay to say it's about the money. You can just tell me the truth and tell me it's about the money. Give money, whatever, I don't care, but just tell me the truth. It wasn't because of the offense, and now I do think that they would never tell you, and I wouldn't ever blame for not telling you until it's too late, that I do think they are concerned. I think I'd be concerned about the health. I'm very concerned about his health, very concerned about that shoulder. Dustin Fox, who I was just texting just a second ago because I saw him in the program. He knows a lot of doctors in his other line of work, in his other business, and they tell you just scary, scary stories about all that. So it just scares you because that's who they're going with, and for better or for worse, it's going to be that way at least this year. Of course, the the Russell Wilson situation kind of gives you a look at it. If it doesn't go that well, they might just decide to bust it up and eat the rest of the contract, and that might be the end of it.
Yeah, I was just wondering, it looked like after he came back, after Deshaun came back the first time, that as hard as he was playing, they weren't playing as hard for him.
Boy, I didn't notice that. I did not notice that.
It just looked like when the quarterback came on, they like gelled, and off they went. With him, they were all doing the job, but they weren't doing it with heart.
Did anybody else notice that? I ain't gonna lie. I watch each one of these games 4 times. I end up watching him more than I watch everything else because I know that's what everybody wants to talk about. So I got to go back and watch that. I wish I had a better answer for you. I have no idea about that. I know that there's guys that like and dislike every guy, and I mean, you got to be able to pull those guys along. If they do lose faith in you, I mean, they had faith in Joe Flacco. The first question we had about Joe Flacco, they had faith in him. They liked him, and so it does tend to push guys forward. I'm gonna have to go back and see that. You were right. You waved your arm right in front of him, right there. Yeah.
I felt Deshaun Watson is a mistake waiting to happen. Having said that, what quarterback has a quicker reaction time than Patrick Mahomes?
Oh, I don't think anybody. I don't think. I think what we're doing right now in the NFL is a lot of guys, like you see the Zach Wilson situation with the Jets. That's just become petty and bitter and nasty. They were fixated on Zach Wilson from BYU from day one because they said he played well in chaos. And I think all these teams are trying to sell themselves on the next version of Patrick Mahomes. I think we're all finding out the hard way there's only one. And unfortunately, we might be one of those teams that do. Someone right there. Yeah.
What do you think about Stefanski calling the plays?
You don't want him to? Who they
They're
get?
hiring an offensive coordinator, but they don't. What is he supposed to do?
Who they get? I think who they get as their backup quarterback might tell you who might call the plays. Like Ken Dorsey called plays for Cam. Well, he was the quarterback coach for Cam Newton. He did not call plays for Cam Newton in Carolina. He called plays for Josh Allen in Buffalo. These are big body mobile quarterbacks. Deshaun is supposed to be a big body mobile quarterback, even though his health is waning here, and we've got to see. Because now I'm at the point I'm like, I can't ask you to protect yourself. You got to go out there and you got to make any play you can. I mean, we have too much invested in this thing. But if they go out and they get a mobile quarterback of some fashion, which is, I mean, it's so weird because backup quarterbacks are usually guys who can just play within an offense. They know the offense. They can be protected. They don't put the ball in danger. And those are still typical 5-7 drop back QBs that you do not play. You don't start anymore. I mean, they're more athletic quarterbacks than ever, but these guys are able to cut themselves out of a life as a backup quarterback just because they can be dependable. But if they find anybody who can move, which again is easier said than done, I think it might give us a little bit of a look into whether or not Ken Dorsey will call the plays.
I was listening to Terry Pluto a month or two ago, and he was talking about don't believe what you see or hear about Donovan Mitchell, that it's a pretty good chance he's going to resign in Cleveland.
Oh, I think it's almost 100% he'll resign. I think it's almost 100%. Yes, absolutely. Well, first off, Terry in basketball, I'm in no position to ever doubt Terry on basketball. Never. He knows the game just about as well as anybody out there. But it makes most sense for him with his money because the Cavs can sign him to the most money. And this was something that Kevin Love tried to do, where Kevin Love thought, if it does go south, I can just get traded to a contender and still make the same money, and then his body betrayed him, basically. If Donovan stays healthy, I mean, that contract, whatever contract he signs, someone's always going to make more. So again, in 3 years, if we got to tank this thing out and Donovan has to go, he'll still be tradable and they'll still be able to get some for him. He knows that.
Do we win a championship with the team we have now?
No.
What do we miss?
Evan Mobley has to get tougher, and I don't know how I do that. It's a hard thing for one man to ask another man to get tougher because he's so young, and he plays against teams that have tough guys inside, and they're wearing the right jersey. Like he plays against Washington, who do have a couple of, they're terrible, but they did have a couple of times 3-and-D guys, good players, and because he knows that they're a 6-win team when they're playing him, he can eat them up. And he can do the same thing with a lot of bad teams. But when he plays against Philly, when he plays against Boston, when he plays against Giannis, there's something there that I do think gets in the way, and I think he gets a little nervous.
Well, the Knicks pushed us around the playoffs last year.
And when they played so poorly against the Knicks the other day, I think that they're in his head as well. Well, that's a terrible answer to give you, but it's the truth.
Do you feel that the injuries in the NFL, is there any chance that the players' union would ask for a reduction in scheduling games? It's just a turnover, and when the team starts out at the beginning of the year, it's not the same team in the middle of the year or even at the end of the year. The amount of injuries, is it all about the money?
I think it's all about the money. You only have so much time to play, and if you ask me to if you ask to cut out games, I just don't know if anybody's ever going to take less money. In professional sports, I don't think they're ever going to do it. And players, they don't trust owners. Owners certainly don't trust players. I don't think they're ever going to take less money. I think they're always going to take more money. I think we'll get to 18 games, and probably that'll stay the way it is. I think it might expand rosters, but the players will always go for the money, especially now. I mean, you got guys. I was even going to mention this in one of the things I was working on before this, is where, like, yeah, there was a time where guys did not make a lot of money, and guys like Mike Ditka did yeoman's work trying to get former players paid and taken care of, and God bless them for doing that. But now it's kind of seen as, listen, I mean, your league minimum is around $750,000. You might, if you do it for 4 years, you get a pension, and I know that can be a little
4
bit.
years is hard to do.
Yeah, and it's very hard to do. But that's the way they look at it, and they say, well, you're going to make a lot of money anyway, and this is what it is. It's a trade-off of money. Because, I mean, it's a $10 billion a year industry. So they're always going to take more money instead of less time playing. The more opportunities to play, too. Yeah, more than likely. Right there.
Yeah, back on the Cavs, do you think, what's the ceiling for Allen? And will he be with us 5 years from now?
No, I don't think he will. I think we're starting to see his ceiling right now on a really good basketball team and what they can do. He is, you mentioned the Knicks. Who was the one who mentioned? You mentioned the Knicks knocking us around. When he made that thing about the lights being too bright, I think he took that very personally, the reaction that it had. I think he's playing the best basketball of his career. I know he's playing the toughest basketball of his career. But I also know that they traded for him. They didn't draft him. I think Kobe very much wants to pay off the players that he's drafted in Darius and Evan Mobley. And I think that with Jared Allen, he might be the more tradable commodity out of the group. As of right now, I mean, that's heresy to say right now. He's playing fantastic. He's so tough. But in the next couple of years, I would probably expect him to be the one they move.
College football is a disaster. Teams going from one league to the next league, and NIL and transfer portal. How are they going to solve all this?
You want to comment?
I'll just keep my mouth shut.
Do you want to get your friend on the phone? You want to get a family member on the phone and he makes a comment there? I think they look at it like this, and I can't fight it, because I can't blame them for taking what they can while they can. I think regulation's coming. I think the NCAA did what they did, so we beg them for regulation. And here we are a couple of years later, and it's like, we got to regulate this stuff. This is getting crazy. I mean, Chip Kelly, I've never seen Chip Kelly smile like that than when he did that press conference last week after spring ball. I mean, he's an assistant. He knows he's making gobs of money. He ain't got to recruit. All he has to do is call plays, and all he has to do is wait on Ryan Day, who now can't even coach his own practices because he has to go to NIL collective events and fundraise for money. And so the assistant coaches are becoming more and more important, and that's where you get a guy like Chip Kelly who's going, I'm just going to be on the hot seat if I stay at UCLA. I'm just going to go with a contender, and if we do really well, which we will because it's Ohio State, I can have my pick of jobs again, or I could just stay at Ohio State and make a lot of money. It's hard to tell them no, don't take it, because you got to get everything you can while you can, because who knows when the next play is going to be your last. But what you're saying is something I'm hearing more and more and more of. I can't fight that, though, that when they kick off at noon and the stadium's still full and they're paying higher ticket prices and they're making more money on TV and they're paying for all the concessions and all the extras, and now you got guys lining up and just donating money to NIL collectives. It's hard to tell them no when they have all this evidence in the bank account that says yes. And it might turn guys like me away. It might, and I watch as much college football as anybody in the city. I put it, except for like Phil Steele, I put it up against anybody. But it's difficult to try to figure out what's what, and I will miss the regionalism. I miss the Big 12 being the old Big 12. I will miss the Big 10 being the way it was, not just coast to coast and everything, but it's hard to get guys whose job it is to raise money to tell them that this is wrong or this is bad and that people are going to go away from it, because everything tells me, and it shuts me up every time I share my feelings on it, that, hey, you know what, Kenny, they kick off at noon and they're all making a lot of money. And I go, I can't fight the bottom line. Last question. Oh, what you got?
Would it help if Dan Gilbert bought the Guardians and Clay Matthews, the linebacker for the Browns? Do you think he'll make it into the Hall of Fame?
First part, the toughest one is Clay Matthews. Regretfully, I say no. And I agree with Tony Grossi. You know, teams do a lot to politic for their players to get into the Hall of Fame. And for the longest time, the Browns did not do enough until it was too late. Really, it was too late. Now I believe it's a senior committee where that's very difficult to get in. You know, I met Clay. His daughter is wonderful, and it kills me to say it. It's weird because he doesn't make a big deal about it. He does not make a big deal about it. He's kind of like, this is what my family wants, I'll let them do it. Clay Matthews seems perfectly at ease with his career, but everybody else wants him to get into the Hall of Fame. I wish he could have gotten to the Hall of Fame, but I think it's going to be very difficult, almost impossible to do. The other part with Dan Gilbert buying the Guardians, he can buy anything he wants. It's like, I think he's the second richest owner in sports.
Pretty close together.
Yeah, but at the same time, would Major League Baseball allow it? Maybe. But now that they have a buyer lined up in David Blitzer, who owns a bunch of different sports properties, not just the Guardians. I mean, I think he has, a piece of the Sixers, and I think he has a piece of a couple other teams. I think it'd be very difficult. I think he'd spend like crazy. I think he'd be our version. He'd be a real version of George Steinbrenner in baseball. But he does probably like better that he's in a league that has a cap, and that basketball, it's tough to get into it for a lot of people. You know, I love the NBA, but basketball works in Cleveland. It does. Even the bad teams can usually be around top 10, top 15 in attendance. It's almost the same, like the same thing with like hockey in Pittsburgh. They do well with attendance in Pittsburgh as that sport is there, and then we still, even when the team's not good, they still draw pretty well. So it's just good business for him there. I don't know if he would see the Guardians in the same light.
Thank you for coming here.
Thank you for having us. Or thank you for having me. Thank you for having Scott. I appreciate it, guys. Thank you.